Welcome back, motorized bike enthusiast. In today's video, we take the Phantom 85 for a nice cruise while still testing its reliability, deal with some constant issues on the F0, explore some of the damage caused by the excessive vibration we had in last week's video while also fixing that issue, and finally, after the cruise, I'll show you how to make your own custom stickers. Last week we put 100 miles on the new Phantom 85 with the replaced brass bushing, and it's handled fine so far, but unfortunately we did that entire 100 miles with excessive vibration that I couldn't quite narrow down. I knew it had something to do with the front motor mount, and it did, but it wasn't what I expected. In most situations, vibration on a motorized bike up to 30 miles an hour is usually caused by one of two things: a poor mounting of the motor to the frame, or a motor running too rich. I'll leave a link in the description to an article which might help some of you cure vibration issues, but a rough running motor can be caused by running too rich and might fool you into thinking it has an unbalanced crank. Yes, generally the cranks on these motors are not very well balanced, and if you're pushing it past 35 miles an hour, you'll tend to really notice that, but in general you should have a smooth running motor up to 30. If you don't, then it might be one of the following issues: the bad motor mount or running too rich. In our situation, it was an overlooked issue. When adding the second universal adapter plate to help raise the motor above the chain ring, I thought that I had to remove the washer and lock washer to prevent the bolts from bottoming out inside the motor. This wasn't the case, and they still bottomed out, just barely, enough to make me think that the plates were tight against the motor, but they weren't, and over time, they began to just slip back and forth, causing our excessive vibration. To my surprise, the rubber motor mounts held up a lot better than I thought they would, and I'm going to keep using them for now to see how long they last. I'll probably regret this in the future, but I couldn't go back to the CNC front motor mount because the pivot point had started to open up, causing it to rock back and forth. And when you engage and disengage the motor, this could create a jarring force on the frame. So this front motor mount is bunked. I might open up the hole and use a larger bolt, but for now we're going to stick with what we got and see how long it lasts. Right away I knew this vibration was going to cause issues if I didn't deal with it immediately, but I just ran out of time and energy. And I'll always show you guys my failures along with victories, because if I don't, new builders might never learn how to not make the same mistakes. So here is what I got from running 100 miles with the excessive vibration. In general, a high quality steel frame will tend to handle vibration better than a high quality aluminum frame. Now, whether or not this aluminum frame is high quality, I don't know. But I do know that aluminum does not like vibration, so we put most of our focus on inspecting the frame at any point where the motor contacts the frame and the welds. We got lucky in our situation. I didn't see any compromises to the frame. Sadly, we didn't get away scot-free, and our issues arose at the exhaust system, where most vibrations on a build will tend to get amplified. Our exhaust gasket started to leak, and we have a crack on the top of our muffler. I blame this completely on myself for the poor mounting situation, and don't believe there's a build quality issue. However, if you notice your Phantom 85 does start to crack on the top of the exhaust, or at the manifold, please let us know so I can add it to a pinned comment with the many other issues that these motors have at the moment. I went ahead and added a support, but it's probably too little too late. I don't usually do this on cheap China dolls because, well, their exhaust systems are lighter, cheaper, easier to get, and usually get replaced anyways. This is a bit more unfortunate on this motor than it would be on any other system, simply because there's no replacement parts that I'm aware of. I have no idea where to find this exhaust gasket at the moment, and a muffler, well, yeah, good luck getting one of those. There's no bolt-on options aftermarket as of yet that I'm aware of. Hopefully that expansion chamber that Bicycle Engines was talking about will arrive sooner rather than later. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and have an update on the F0 build. I'm not quite ready for a full review on this bike, but we're getting pretty close. I noticed the very first time I ever filled the tank all the way up that it was leaking out of the back of the seat post where two welds came together and there was a small pinhole. I filled this area with some quick steel epoxy putty and touched it up with some glossy black paint. So far it's been holding fine and appears to be the only point of leaking on the frame. By far the biggest issue I've had with the F0 since day one is the chain line. Not so much alignment, but keeping the chain from rubbing on the tire has been incredibly difficult. I've tried with and without a chain tensioner, I've tried a 415H, a 41 roller, and nothing seems to be working. The only way I can see to get around this would be to try and space the sprocket and rotor away from the hub. But you're very limited on your clearance here because you also have to move the caliper out to do so, and it doesn't have much left to move. For now, I'll probably just replace the rear tire to something a little bit thinner so I can get more chain clearance. And lastly, I'd like to talk about the gas cap. Because of this frame's design, anytime you have more than 3/4 of a tank, it leaks almost all the time. If you slightly tilt your bike to the left or right, or if you're just cruising around at high speed, the vibration's always spitting gas out around the cap. There's no seal. There's also no vent. I added a seal with just a bit of old rubber inner tube. That was really easy to do, and that's holding just fine. But I also had to drill a small hole in the cap and match it up with the rubber so I wouldn't get a vacuum lock inside the tank. I bring up these issues not just to help review this particular frame, but also to let you know that your issues don't magically go away if you buy a gas bike frame. You're still going to have to deal with many of the same problems you would on a generic big box store bike. I put years of miles on a Cranbrook, and my smile was the same size as it was riding the F-Zero. Just being on the bike and riding is what I enjoy the most. You don't need one of these high-dollar frames to enjoy this hobby. They have their perks, but in many situations, you're still going to deal with all the same issues. So just keep that in mind. In last Sunday's video, I promised you guys a nice cruise ride, so here it is. And when we're done, we'll come back and I'll show you how to make your own custom stickers. I guess that seal worked out. It's nice to look down and not see gas all over the tank. And it's obviously venting because, well, we would have not made it nearly this far. So, good deal there. Unfortunately, brand new chain, so it's stretched. Still rubbing on the tire. I was hoping that the 415 chain, because it's a little bit thinner and it can center better on the sprocket, that it would give me just a little more space between the tire and the chain. But I'm probably just going to have to go with a thinner tire, which is a shame because these are pretty nice. Yeah, real quick while I'm cleaning this off, I want to give a shout out to Motored Life for being the OG motorized bike channel to use a 360 camera. The first time I saw him using on one of his videos, I knew eventually I had to have one. And thank you very much, because this thing opens up a world of possibilities. They got a lot of downsides though. There's an entire extra step in the editing process. It's an easy step, but it means you have to go over all the footage one extra time. So recording in short trip durations is probably best with these. And the biggest flaw by design, which there's nothing they can really do about, is the exposed lenses. You have to be very conscious where this camera is at all times. You can't just set it on a table. You'll scratch up your lens, and if you get any scratches or chips on these, it will show up in the video. And replacing one of these lenses is like $160, as I found out, and it takes about a month. I get asked this question all the time about these cameras, how they're able to just look like they're floating, like a drone. They hide the selfie stick in software, and the reason they can do that is because these are two fisheye lenses, and each one of these lenses can actually see around or behind itself. It can actually see behind itself. Anything within the top of the lens that's in view can be seen, so it causes the two images to overlap right at the base of the camera, and it can see what's here, it can see what's here, and it can cut this out and blend it together. There's some magic behind it, but that's it in a nutshell. This G2 reed, I went ahead and put gray silicone, the fuel resistant stuff, on all of the gaskets, and I faced the mating surfaces on the reed block itself. I don't think I have any air leaks. Idle's doing pretty good. Low throttle, high throttle is doing pretty good. My mid throttle's a bit choppy. I think that's the needle. I'm running the stock jets in the PZ20, stock needle position right in the middle. The only thing I've done to the motor at the moment is just retard the timing a little bit so I can actually cruise at 30 miles an hour, you know, without our popcorn machine going crazy. Anytime I stop to take a break for 5 minutes, the motor cools off a little bit. You gotta warm it back up before you get that nice smooth 30 miles an hour. But once she's good and heat soaked, she runs nice and smooth for a good cruise. this is probably not going to impress the Minarelli guys, something I have not dabbled in yet. But for a stock motor kit, you can't beat the torque on this thing. From a dead stop to 30 miles an hour, it just blows everything else out of the water. The YD100 doesn't hold a candle to it. Now, I'm talking stock motor. With our motor mount issue solved, the bike is running great, much smoother, and between 0 and 30 miles an hour, pulls like a demon. For members of our Discord server, in next week's video, I'll be hiding Mr. Piston in several locations throughout the video. The first 5 members to find it will win some free stickers. But for now, I'm going to show you how you can make your own. I'm just an amateur at this, and these aren't anything special, but it's great for customizing your own bike. Here's my process. For paper, I like to use this, well, I'm testing at the moment, this vinyl sticker paper. So far, so good, but I like vinyl because it stands up to elements fairly well, temperature changes, moisture, and if you spill a little bit of gas on it, the vinyl stickers tend to not immediately peel away, as long as you prepped your surface and cleaned it well. Now this process is going to be useful because it removes the background of an image and gives you only the things you're interested in. It goes beyond cropping. It actually makes the background transparent. So I could take this image and overlay it on a video, and the video would play right up to the border of all these objects without a big square in the background making it look like an obvious picture. And this is also good for logos and a whole bunch of other things. Like we took this image from this right here, and as you can see, if I tried to overlay this image onto a video or make a logo out of it, you've just got a basic rectangle, and that doesn't look very nice. But when we remove that rectangle, we can add in things like this. Now, this is intended for a sticker, so the lettering's in black, but it would be printed on white, so it would show up better. But as you can see, the sky's the limit. So let's start with something basic. Say you wanted to make a logo, or just a sticker with additional text, and you don't want that square background. So we'll take these 2 motors here and we'll open them up in Print 3D. Now we're going to first go up to Canvas. We're going to click on Transparent Canvas. Once we've done that, we will go to Magic Select, and we will crop as much of the background out as we can. Now this particular image was shot pretty close, so there's not much to crop out, but any little bit helps. This is going to help the computer decide what the object of interest is. And it's done a pretty good job, but it's never going to be perfect. And it gets more complicated when photos have a lot of detail in them. I took this picture with these motors sitting on 2 pieces of white foam board. So we're going to click on Add right here, and we're going to get any of the picture that was missed by the computer. And you don't have to get absolutely perfect with this, especially if you're just making some small stickers. The larger the image is going to be, such as a t-shirt, the more detail you'd want to keep, and the more refined you'd want to do this. But right now we're just going to add in the little bits that are missing, such as the spark plugs. And that's pretty much it for this one. Now we're going to remove the extra white that was added in. Now the image doesn't, the computer doesn't realize this is 2 motors. It's thinking this is one object. So when I remove some of this white, it might try to cut out things it's not supposed to, like that right there. So all we're going to do is just go back to the Add tool, and we're going to roughly outline the rest of this image to put it back in. Oh, I kind of missed this down there. Okay. So we can continue removing the white. And the longer you make the add and remove borders, the better the computer's going to be able to decide what is really intended for this picture. And there it did a pretty good job, but we lost our studs. Now, you might not want your studs in the image, and that's fine. You can take them out. I also left out these wires over here because I don't need those. It just doesn't make it look as clean. But this is all we're doing. We're just removing the background and telling the computer what to keep. All right, that's good enough for this example. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hit Done. Now it's going to allow us to drag this image off of the canvas. And we'll go to Brushes. We'll go to the eraser, make this nice and big. And we will go ahead and just remove the entire background from this image. Now, in this situation, it would have been better for me to use a light color, maybe light blue or red, to make it easier to see all the background and remove it so I don't miss any, because if you miss any of these little spots, it will add it to the image. Once we're done removing the background and we've double checked to make sure we didn't miss anything, we'll click on select. We'll go back over to our motors and drag them back onto the canvas. Now sometimes it will expand them beyond the borders of the canvas when you move them. So we're going to need to resize it just a little bit to make sure the entire image fits on the canvas. If anything is left out of this little white square, it won't be saved in the image. And that's it. Now we just go to Menu. We go to Save As, Image. Once it's done loading, you'll click right here and you'll go to PNG. This will give you the transparent background. Now that I have this image saved, I can overlay it on a video, a logo, a sticker, anything like that. And you'll only have this, and it won't add any extra data. Now let's try something a little more complicated. Now, I have this image here, which is a nice picture. I turn it into black and white. Okay, and the reason I did this is so that I can make this. I've given life to the image where the bike has traveled. Kind of a neat little touch. Now this is a little too much for a sticker, maybe even a t-shirt or logo, but it's a cool picture. And the way I did this was after I made a copy in black and white, I went back to the original, I opened it up with Paint 3D, and I essentially did the exact same process we did last time with the motors. Now to show you how I was able to combine the image which we just outlined here with the full black and white image here, I'll go ahead and open the black and white image with Paint 3D first. I'll go to Menu, Insert. We'll find the image that we just traced. After inserting the image, we can readjust it to overlay onto the original. And that's good enough for our situation where we intended to make a sticker out of it or a small logo. And you just click anywhere outside the canvas, and it will now combine the image. Now it's one image. You can't readjust it from this point. So if you made a mistake, you're going to have to go back to the black and white and reinsert the color. So let's add some text to something. Now if I wanted to insert another picture for something like our living meme, I could go to the menu, go to Insert, find our little Amos mascot, and give him a nice little spot, give him a little bit of rotation maybe. We want this 3D, so we'll make it 3D, and that will let us layer it in the background with this little tool right here. Okay, and now we got our little Amos popping up wherever we want him. Okay, now for text, let's start over. Now I don't care too much for the text in Paint 3D. It doesn't have really any options, and when you're layering it on something with a lot of detail, it can be very difficult to choose the right color. But if you're making a sticker on these transparent backgrounds, this works out okay. For me, I'm going to choose a font that's easy to see from a distance. I like to use impact in most of my work. And for a color, I'll stick with maybe a dark red for this one, and just click anywhere on the image and add in something clever. Okay, and just click off the image, and you can make all your adjustments here. Now you need to make sure you get all the adjustments right before you click outside the canvas. Otherwise, it will not save, or it will add it to the image as soon as you click outside the canvas. So put it somewhere clever, something like that. Just for an example. Click outside the canvas, see how it looks. If you're happy with that layering, then you can move on. Me, I would readjust this to make it a little easier to see. But as you can see, using this process, you can layer things on top. Or you can just leave the letters in front of the image if you want to focus on them. All right, that's all there is to it. From this point, printing is where the trickiest part comes. Now, for printing these images onto sticker paper, it's a little tricky to get it just right if you want to print more than one image. So we'll go ahead and open it with regular paint. I'll hit select, and I will go ahead and drag around the border of the image. Make sure you don't cut anything out, but keep the border as close as you can. Okay, and then I will copy this with Control-C, and I will repaste it. But we need to make the border bigger. So let's go ahead and make this bigger. You can stack them next to each other over and over. Once you have a bunch of them, you can reselect the stack and make some layers down. You're going to need to figure out how many and what size is just right to fill the most real estate on one piece of paper. As you can see here, I have them stacked in such a way after a little bit of trial and error that when I go to print preview, I can see how they'll show up on a piece of paper. I'll go to print setup to try and get more stickers for this, and I'll move it to portrait. And as you can see, when we use portrait, I can fill this paper a little bit better. You'll have to play around with the sizing and the grid pattern to get the most out of your printer paper. But there you go. You have my basic process on how to make a few custom stickers for yourself or a few of your buddies.